Hi, Brother Wilson. This is Danny Mears here. And I'm going to be teaching Bryce. And because I'm a history major, specifically American Revolutionary history, I've decided to specifically focus on the Battle of Yorktown. Um, Now, my goals for this lesson are for Bryce to understand what led to the British surrender, specifically of Yorktown, and what understand the major players and obviously the historical events that led up to it, and focus on really what motivated the British to surrender at that point. So, how I intend to do that is just a brief overview of how I want this lesson to go. It's going to start off very informative, um, a little lecture heavy at first, where I'm going to give him the basic information of where George Washington is, and where Cornwallis is, and the route that both of them took to get there, as well as why George Washington decided to make the bold move to go to Yorktown and stay um, instead of fighting in New York like he was, as well as talk about the influence of Count de Grasse and Rochambeau, and see how they factored in to the success of the colonies fighting against the British. So the first part of my lesson is going to be a little lecture heavy, giving that background. I don't intend to take more than 7-8 minutes on that specifically, and I'll be including maps, multiple maps to show the movement and explain it through Bryce. We'll be doing this side by side. That way we're able to communicate better, because that's how males communicate at the best level. And then I've created a kind of a game. It's a little confusing, but I'm hoping with some scaffolding and a little bit of trial and error, we'll figure it out. I kind of want to set it up as a risk game. So my hope is that after showing him a map of Yorktown, I'll give him probably 5 minutes using the tables, the physical arrangement of the class, the tables and chairs, to create a kind of fort similar to the British. Now, I will be doing the same thing, but from the French and the colonist point of view. And then after we both have created a fort, or forts slash front lines, the hope is to delegate him specific resources, and I'm going to do that through bean bags. Now, these bean bags are going to be kind of the resources that the British had. This time, they didn't have that many, so they were just trying to wait until they could get more resources in, which, thanks to Count de Grasse, the British were unable to do that. But I'm going to set it up so that Bryce is just trying to hold out. And so what's going to happen is, for 30 seconds, I'm going to be the British, or he's going to be the British, and he's going to try to take bean bags and toss them into a laundry basket behind my boundary lines. This is going to be his ammunition. I'm going to be doing the same thing to him. Alright, now he's going to have, we'll say, 10 men. I'm going to have 30 because the ratio of men was 3 to 1. Now he's going to have 10 bean bags, one for each guy. And that's all he's going to have. Once he uses his resources, he's done, in a sense. Kind of to show him that the British's game plan was to just hold on, wait for those resources. And so every basket that one of us makes, we will get to erase one of the points that the other guy has. This is going to be very extrinsic motivation, because he's going to be able to see it's going to be competitive, so I feel like it'll make a real factor in him. And then after we play this for 30 seconds, we're going to stop. And we're going to explain, and we're going to talk about, okay, he ran out of resources. Now what? He has no defense. So my hope is to have him go to a higher level of understanding. And as we go through this, I'm going to say, okay, in 5 turns, you're going to get resources from the sea like the British plan. And then with that, showing him that, okay, he's going to get tons of resources from the sea. He doesn't realize that Count de Grasse has now formed a blockade, cutting off all British aid. So he's going to go in there thinking, okay, he's going to get some more resources, more men, and then he's going to find out that he doesn't have it anymore. So we're going to go through like 30-second intervals where we'll play for 30 seconds, and we'll tally up what resources he has, how many men he has, and then have him formulate a game plan to go from there. And then eventually he's going to come to the development that he's going to have to give up, and he's going to have to surrender because he has some men that he has to save and he has no other option. And then we'll talk about how sometimes that moral development of how sometimes, even though giving up is a bad thing, in the right circumstance, under the right conditions, it's the best option. Just like it was for the British. It would have been suicide for them to stay and to fight. So, I know that sounds a little confusing. I'm hoping with some scaffolding, this is new for me, as well as some personal experience, we'll be able to figure out a better game plan to run the game. Just to run through some of the basic 100 concepts I have, probably about 20, 25, 30 that I want to run through, just specifically pointing out how I intend to implement it and what I intend to do with it. So the first thing I'm going to do when he walks through the door and we start our lesson, I'm going to find out what he knows about the Revolution, what he knows about these players. Has he ever heard of Clinton for the British Army or Cornwallis? I'm assuming that in a schema he's going to know potentially Cornwallis and George Washington, hopefully George Washington, but I doubt that he'll know Count de Grasse or Rochambeau or Clinton. So I'm going to find out what he knows about Yorktown and how the surrender of the British happened, and from there I'll be able to either correct some misconceptions he has, or some just misconnections that he has. To cover the cognitive domain, we're going to be talking about historical figures, and facts and resources that the British and the colonists had, and some of the events that played out. So we're going to trigger that domain through understanding and knowledge specifically. The affective domain, while playing the game, I hope that it increases his stress level because he's going to have to make decisions that impact whether he succeeds or whether he doesn't. So hopefully those emotions and that stress, those choices that he's going to make during the game is going to encourage him and show him how to deal with making decisions under hard and stressful scenarios. As well as, this game is going to be active. There's going to be throwing, there's going to be a little bit of running, and a little bit of dodging, as well as shooting. So this is definitely going to trigger that psychomotor, connecting cognitive and the psychomotor for me, and my personal opinion, my personal theory. I believe that is one of the highest levels of understanding and learning, connecting those two. So that's what I intend to do. I intend to incorporate information as well as physical activity. That's my hope here. Facilitating anxiety. My hope here with this game is like his anxiety is going to go up. He's going to have to deal with the stress of making those decisions. I'm hoping that it will help him understand and make him better at making smarter, more effective even economical decisions in a stressful situation. Um, like I talked about the misconception, well, we're going to find out if he has, some interference there with how the British surrendered and what kind of all played out. And that the physical arrangement of the class is he's going to create a base, I'm going to create a base using tables and chairs, so that's going to change the way the class is set up. But originally we're going to start off just a typical classroom, and then I'm going to allow that creativity of him to create his own fort in a general sense. So that is what I intend to do. Proximity, this zone of proximal distance, this is going to be going to take some adjustment on my part, depending on how he's understanding and how he's using the game. I'm going to have to make adjustments. I know that there's going to be some form of adjustments. Either we're going to have to simplify it, or it's too simple, and I'm going to have to make it a little complicated a little bit. How I intend to do that is if I need to make it simpler, then we're not going to worry too much about his resources. I'm going to give him an unlimited amount of resources, because that is not what's really important. If I need to make it more complicated, then I'm going to create like a dodging effect, so he's going to have to worry about somebody shooting in his basket as well as dodging a beanbag. So there's some ways that I intend to adjust so I'm in the same zone as he is, but really it's going to come down to how he is responding to the game and to the information that I'm relaying to him. There's going to be informative and control language. Specifically during the beginning, when I'm checking his schema, I'm trying to find out what he knows, and I'm informing him about the important players in the Battle of Yorktown. It's going to be very informative. When we're playing the game, I'm going to have some control language, because we're going to have to stop the game, and that's going to take control language, and I'm going to have to be like, hey, you need to stop for a second and bring that level of calmness down, and then slip into some more informative language. So I'm going to be using both of those. I hope to keep it more informative than control. That's my personal behavior. I intend to use my contagious behavior. I'm competitive. I want him to be competitive, especially with this game. And so I'm going to be coming up with abstract ideas on how to attack his base. My hope is that with me being not necessarily far out there, but looking for other options and creating new ways, my hope is for him to do the same, raising that level of cognitive development. So I intend to use my behavior as a prototype for him to follow, as well as hopefully he catches on to my specific behavior. Dealing with the working and short-term memory, there's going to be a lot of stimulation going on. The short-term memory is going to be going crazy. So during the game, every 30 seconds, we're going to stop. We're going to stop and allow, and we're going to analyze what has happened, thus allowing kind of things to calm down, him to realize what's happened, and then I'm going to ask him specific questions, like why did you do this, and what did you think would happen, causing him to really go through Bloom's taxonomy and analyze and evaluate and create a better way of doing things. That's really what I want to focus on. So Every 30 seconds, I'm going to do that. If we do that stop during the game multiple times, up to 10 times, I'm guessing, if time allows, this is going to allow his long-term memory more times to catch up, as well as more time to store it with repetition use. I intend to go over who was there, the important players, and why Cornwallis chooses to do things the way he does, and so thus allowing his long-term memory to process what specifically is happening. Interference for Bryce. He's an 11-year-old boy. We're going to be playing a competitive game. There's your interference. Okay, that is what I'm worried about the most. I'm worried about stopping the game and having his mind still focused on the game. So it's really going to take, I'm planning on using some control language, even eliminating distractions by taking his resources away. And so that's what I'm concerned about most, is that interference with the game, taking away from the cognitive message and information that I'm trying to give him. With the hierarchy of need, Maslow's, I looked it up, and it's self-acculation. I intend to do that by asking him questions, and this will give him creative opportunities and to create a strategy to what he plans to do the next time we play, or the next round that we go into, with his resources and everything. With this being a game, it is very extrinsic. He's going to be motivated because our scores and our resources and our troops are going to be on a whiteboard. That's also part of the physical arrangement. And he's going to see whether he's losing or whether he's winning. And so I feel like that's his extrinsic motivation. He's going to be able to see that I am winning because he'll be outmatched. He won't have the resources or the troop capacity to beat me. It's not about skill, it's just he doesn't have the resources to fight me off, to fight the colonists off. And so he realizes that he's losing no matter what. And that's going to cause some anxiety, and I understand that. But that's what I want him to understand, is at what point do we withdraw. His self-efficacy, he's an 11-year-old male. He's going to come to play, and he's going to be confident that he can win. And I'm going to give him the false illusion that he can win, even though I know that with the resources he's given, he will not have a chance. With him being an 11-year-old male, I assume his self-esteem is going to be high. He's going to have think very highly of himself. Involving the attribution theory, I feel like once he understands that there's no way he can win, he's going to blame that on external things, which in reality he's absolutely right. It's not going to matter what his skill level is. What's going to matter is his resources and his scenario and his situation. So he's going to blame it on his external situation. And it's probably going to be fairly stable because we're going to be playing multiple rounds and it's going to be consistent. So I feel like it's going to be an external, stable environment. Using his imaginary audience, we're going to be pretending like we're British, or he's British and I'm the colonist. You know, allowing that imaginary audience to take role and forcing him to make decisions. This is a very constructivism lesson plan. I'm hoping that through his experience, He's going to understand, strategy as well as when it's time to give up. I intend to use Vygotsky's method of scaffolding, and as well as using that zone of proximal distance like we talked about, either simplifying the game or complicating the game a little further, making it more difficult for him. With Piaget's cognitive stages, I intend to, I'm assuming he's in the formal operation stage, but with him using abstract ideas as well as strategies, we're going to stay right in that zone, right in that stage. That's where I intend to keep him. I want him forming abstract ideas, strategies, coming up with explanations, as well as that cognitive development of managing his resources correctly. I intend during the after 30 seconds of playing, during that break, of using Bloom's taxonomy, asking questions that cause him, like, what was your game plan, or what do you intend to do now? What is your game plan now? Allowing him to create, making it a higher level of learning. And then we'll always evaluate the last round. We'll talk about what worked, what didn't work, what can be improved, so we're hitting that level of understanding and learning, of analyzing what went wrong and what could have been better. And just kind of sitting back and examining, and then formulating theories, and then testing them. Creating theories and testing them. So I intend to stick with the higher level of Bloom's taxonomy, incorporating multiple of them, not just sitting at one. My hope is eventually it's going to trickle down to he's going to understand the historical facts and the information, but I really want him to understand the purpose. Talking about Ericsson, I'm intending to have him in the industry versus inferiority. He's going to come to the understanding that he can't win, and finally accepting that, and accepting what's going to happen will happen. That's the stage that I intend to have him in, or create the environment that he will be in. Involving Kohlberg's theory, the social contract, where we're always told never to quit, never to quit, never to quit. Well, even though that is the law, my hope is that he'll realize, for the greater good, for the better option, to save more lives, it's better to quit than keep fighting and losing more people. So that's what I hope he develops morally, is that even though something is, the law states this, sometimes we need to change it up a little bit. So that's kind of my lesson plan. I know my game sounds a little confusing, and I'm still working on the details specifically of it. But my hope is that he'll understand that the Americans won because they had the resources. They had the numbers in their favor, whereas the British just didn't. They had to give up because, not because they were inferior. The If anything, I feel like they were more superior at their fighting and their technique. But I want him to know that the colonists won because they chose the right time to strategy, which allowed them to be in a better place than the British were. Sorry that my lesson plan was really late, Brother Wilson. But I'm really excited to doing this. This has been very, I will say, frustrating. Trying to formulate a lesson plan and a fun way to incorporate it. That's one of the weakest parts of history, is it tends to be a lot of facts and information thrown at the student, and the student regurgitating it back, and it doesn't stick. So I'm experimenting with this lesson. I want to see if it'll work, and if it works, then that's great. I'll incorporate other lessons like this in the future when I'm a teacher. If it backfires, I'll reevaluate and see what can be done better. But thank you so much for everything that you do. I really appreciate you, and I know that this class is helping me from a teacher or as a future teacher. So thank you. And feel free to give me any feedback in mail. So I feel like I can take whatever criticism you can. But thank you for your time. And I'm excited to work with Bryce. I think this is going to be a fun lesson. And I feel like the game will actually work and help aid in the learning process. So, thank you.